Marc is an advisor to Salt. He sits on a board that we have, which is to help us make smarter, better decisions about our clients. And so he's been a great asset to have us as a sort of an informant and an influencer. And I think he plays a similar role for many of the companies that he works with today. And so it's been great to have him work with us in that capacity. So thank you very much for doing that. And one of those things is we persuaded him to come and do one of these talks with us to talk a little bit about who he is and where he comes from and what he's up to now and some of the things that he's doing. Marc was the co-founder of Netflix. He started with them in '96. He was the CEO until 2004 when he left. And in that time, Netflix went from being a creative idea developed in the back of a car to an amazing brand that is almost held up as one of the biggest sort of successes of the internet age. And you know, they've done an incredible job at transforming the way we watch TV and the way we consume entertainment. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Netflix. So I was doing my homework, and one of the things it says in the book is that in 1997, you had an inventory of 925 titles, most of which were old and bad. By 2004, you had shipped your 1 millionth DVD, and 2 years later, you had shipped your 1 billionth DVD. I mean, in the space of really half a dozen years, something that was just the germ of an idea had become established as a different way to view entertainment and really transform the industry.
These things don't happen easily. And I mean, a lot of work goes into startup, but one thing you have to realize, especially about Netflix, is that the Netflix you know today is incredibly different than the Netflix that was in place that day that Reed and I said, let's start a company. I mean, for one thing, despite the $40, late fee, the Netflix on its first day had due dates and it had late fees. It was basically a la carte video rental, just the same. And we also, not only did we rent DVDs, we sold DVDs. And we sold a ton of DVDs, way more DVDs sell than renting. It didn't work. And no matter what we tried, we couldn't get people to rent. We couldn't get, if them were rented, we couldn't get them to come back and rent a second time. Punch cards, discounts, everything. And so to survive, what you have to do is keep on changing. So we tested everything. Test, until finally got to this place where we said, we have to do something dramatic. And that's kind of when we tested the model, which was, what would happen if we let people keep as many as they want? What would happen if we let them make a list? What would happen if you did subscription? We tested all three of those things at the same time. So I think what you see in that explosion of discs is, after many years, and it was several years of trying, we finally stumbled on a formula that actually we could do for less money than people were willing to pay for the service.
Right.
And that kind of transforms things. And then it just begin. It's one of those things everyone goes, how do you know when you have product market fit? And the answer is you can just tell. Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur is walking away from something which is half successful and betting everything on a chance for something to be successful. And we said, we cannot have this complexity if we're really going to focus on one thing. And the hardest thing was saying, which one do we pick? And luckily we picked the right one, but it was because we looked out and said, okay, this is a commodity on the selling side. And right now, Amazon is only doing books, but it's only a matter of time before they also sell DVDs. And then Walmart, then Kmart, and then pretty much every place will sell them and drive our margins into the ground. We're in the middle of a corporate retreat. So early that morning, myself and Reed and Barry, our CFO, at 5 o'clock in the morning, go to the airport and had a leased jet there, which belonged to Vanna White, which was kind of a little bit of trivia.
Was she there?
No, she didn't come with it.
Here's my jet.
But we always said we're in the wrong business if Vanna White has a jet. And flew to Blockbuster, and we made them what we thought was a very reasonable proposal, which is that this is perfect. Why don't we run your online business? And just let us take care of that, and it'll be great you can focus on your bricks and mortar business. And they laughed. They thought it was the stupidest thing they ever heard, and the meeting was about 20 minutes long. And we kind of slunk back to Alice. But then said, okay, we are going to show them that that was a big mistake. And there was actually, I really don't gloat in business situations, but two things happened. And one, that there was in Blockbuster in Santa Cruz that we used to drive by all the time. And we'd kind of scattered out. And that Blockbuster finally had to close. And it was absolutely because of Netflix. And that was, I know someone lost their job, so I should feel really bad about that, but I'm sorry. That was very, very gratifying.
They were probably Netflix customers.
That's right, thank you. One of the things that happens once you leave a company like Netflix, which has some level of success, is every entrepreneur comes out of the woodwork who wants money and wants advice. They somehow think something's going to rub off on them. But in that process, I have met every single Netflix of company. The Netflix of shoes, the Netflix of ties. Seriously, everyone goes, it's this brilliant idea. You'll pick one out, we'll send it to you, when you don't like it, send it back. But one of the ones I did take seriously was a company called Book Renter, which was the Netflix of textbooks. And I think that was kind of the first dip into recognizing how ripe education was for a transformation. And for example, at Netflix, one of the things I think I'm probably the most proud of is how we positioned that company to anticipate change. It was called Netflix for a reason. We realized from day one that eventually people would be receiving their movies in a digital format. So the trick is, you can't build a company from day one, which is about digital delivery of movies, for example, because the infrastructure's not there, the studios aren't on board, the technology's not in place, the customers aren't ready for it. But you have to begin building some kind of value in your brand that transcends the technological change, which you have to embrace at the same time. For the Netflix case, it was not about we are the fastest plastic shippers in the country. It was about we're a great place to find great things to watch, which of course is delivery agnostic. So how do you build your brand in a way that transcends delivery? How do you anticipate these changes? One of the things I learned, of course, from the Netflix experience and the Book Runner one is that there's so many factors that it's not just flipping one switch. It's not just saying, boy, if only there was an e-reader. Right. That's not enough. If only some of the textbooks were a digital format, that's not enough. There's so many entrenched behaviors, at least in higher education, where professors want custom material. They're in this habit of updating material and being able to have new editions all the time. There's lots of things, additional materials need to go along with it. It's all being sold through a bookstore. So there's all these things which have to get lined up. And I think the people who will be successful in transforming it, not just in textbooks, which I know a lot about, but in each of these areas, is someone who can really look at the entire ecosystem and say, how can I change a whole bunch of things simultaneously? The thing is, to take a single swing at an unproven idea was very time-consuming. A lot of people, a lot of money, a lot of time. Now you can take a swing very quickly. The tool stack is so good that someone who is younger, less experienced, can put something together. It's not going to be a finished, polished product, but can they put together something small enough, light enough, that emulates the thing you're trying to prove quickly. As a result, you've opened this thing up to young people. You have people who are 17, 18, 19-year-olds starting companies, not because the market wants all these apps, but because these kids can. You have no idea how many. I do a lot of work with people who are early stage entrepreneurs, meaning they're in college or just out of college. And the trivial thing is all of their apps are things like, how do I meet girls? Or what's for dinner in the cafeteria? But it's great because they're learning this behavior of how do I identify a problem that's real that maybe I could solve. So even though we're seeing lots of these apps and trivial things, I think it's just a matter of time before these young entrepreneurs get permission to take bigger swings. So I've lost the ability to really be more discriminating about what's going to win or not win. So instead, I view my angel investments as doing for people what someone did for me, which is giving someone that I like this chance to take a swing at starting a company. The other thing I do, which is probably actually more informative for me, is as we have this movement of people younger and younger being able to start a company, they're technically brilliant, they're very clever, they're very logical, but they're very clueless about a whole range of other things. And in some ways, I can kind of be their adult supervision. So for example, these early stage companies will, young people, co-founders who are maybe 22 and 23, they raise some money, and with the money kind of comes the responsibility to have a board. And you realize that not only, and so you have the CEO who's going to have his first board meeting. And you realize is not only has he never chaired a board meeting before, he's never even been to a board meeting before. Right. And you recognize that it's not just about what's the technology, what's the market. It's this whole range of problems that they had no idea existed. Netflix, was certainly the big hit, but that was actually my 7th startup. So I did that from the time I was in my early 20s until almost 50. And that was your life. And then when I stopped, I said, I need to stop. The problem is, the skill you have as an entrepreneur is seeing problems and seeing a solution, and it becomes something that has to live. This has to happen. And you just want to rush in and create the solution. That the whole idea of going to school to be an entrepreneur, it's an awful idea.
Yeah, completely.
And I said I spent a lot of time working with schools, and I work with liberal arts schools mostly because I went to one and my kids go to them. And what you realize is that our current elite educational system basically ruins people to be entrepreneurs because it squeezes all the risk out of them. But the answer is, how do you learn these things? And one of the things I think you're alluding to is that there's been a tremendous increase in what are called incubators, which are basically more organized systems of mentorship, where someone who has an idea will come and be taken care of to the level of, here's a desk, the heat's on, the air conditioning works, here's some seed money. Here's someone who knows all about your legal issues. Here's someone who can help you with your accounting. Here are people to vet your idea. Here's experts on analysis. Here's experts on growth hacking. And support people while they're formulating their ideas or finding out whether their idea is viable. And I've worked with a bunch of incubators, and some of them are very, very good. One thing I will mention is, though, there's actually a new model which I think is even more effective, which is not quite as visible yet. And it's kind of called a producer model. And Hollywood is a reasonable analogy to this. And you have a Hollywood producer whose job is to find the script, then to find who's going to be the big actors, who's going to direct. He gets the financing, works out all these pieces to put a movie on. And there's now people who basically produce a startup. But I think the thing you really try and do is create this culture of data-driven decision-making. That it's not just your intuition or your best bet. It's saying to yourself, how do we know whether what we're doing is the right thing? And continually course correct. And get yourself in the habit of making those decisions based on what the real data tells you. And the clever part of it is that you can't just randomly test things. So there's a combination of art and science. I mean, obviously you're familiar with these things, but it's what to test is flashes of insight and genius, which is not numerically or analytically based. But being able to figure out what effect those things had, or which of those insights ended up was the brilliant insight, comes after analyzing it. The first step I always take is back up. What are the 3 or 4 things that are really the crucial things you'll have to get right? And everything else rolls up to those numbers. Dollar Shave Club is a good example. And if you haven't, anyone ever heard of Dollar Shave Club? It's not going to change the world, it's just razor blades. But what's brilliant about it is how they have targeted a very, very narrow personality type. And they speak to that person very, very directly. And these people are scattered, but they feel like they're all together. So that's a very, very powerful thing that the web allows us to do, is collect these people and then speak to them very directly.
It's kind of funny. It brings it almost full circle back to, it's just smarter, better, direct marketing.
Well, it's kind of funny when I go in and speak to these e-tailers and things like that. They think I'm like a genius or something because I kind of can talk about things like the analysis and the repeat business and the multi-buyers and all the stuff that I just did for 20 years, my early career, and it's all back again. And it's actually it's so exciting to me because it really is. You know, this is the ultimate dorkness to be so into direct marketing. And now it's cool again.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's certain things that really turn me on, and I find them so fascinating. And like, for example, you can tell the whole e-tailing thing, or this micro e-tailing, I think is so incredibly interesting. I love two-sided markets where people are disrupting these old businesses by creating whole new ways for buyers and sellers to connect to each other and totally disrupting the old ways that used to happen. For some reason, I love that process of how you have to create two sides of the market at the same time. I mean, I don't know why. That's just really, really cool to me. I like a lot of the education. I like subscription businesses. And I include SaaS businesses in that because of these mechanics, again, back to my past,
right.
of acquiring a customer and then keeping them engaged and worrying about how do I keep them from churning off. All the same stuff we did when we were starting magazines, all the same stuff we did when we were starting mail order companies, and now we're right back to having those things, but with much more powerful tools.
Yeah.
You can use all this fancy marketing. You can do all kinds of things to increase click-through rates, but fundamentally, you've got to be delivering a service that people really, really want. And you've got to have a brand that people really genuinely fall in love with, and all the rest of it's just bells and whistles.
And I think that is a perfect note to end on. If you're interested, I know the Netflix of branding. I can introduce you to them. Marc, thank you very much.
My pleasure.